Thank you, ladies. I'm excited to be here, though I was disappointed that there is a whole lot less ice cream at the morning group than the evening group. That was, I just thought that I will take my honorarium in ice cream, just so you guys know.
Ice cream.
So I'm excited to be here. As Lily said, I'm retired. I stepped down from my pastoral position to stay at home with my kids, which was this crazy decision that was only from God, because I am one of those people that I am not strictly maternal. Now, I mean, I have kids, so like in that sense, like literally maternal, but I'm not one of those people that grew up wanting to have kids, and I didn't dream of what my kids would look like. I dreamed of what my life would be like without kids. And just this incredible, like, long story for another day, but like God just really intervened in my life, and I felt called to motherhood. But through my pregnancy, in between those awkward like belly rubs that strangers give you, I had this nagging fear that I would not love my kids. You know, that fear of like, well, is it going to be worth it, right? And I just felt like, I don't know, and I would tell people sometimes, and of course they'd say, no, you're going to love your kids. Like, you don't understand how much you are going to love your kids. And I thought, yeah, like, people say that, right? But, you know, we all have different experiences. And everyone's like, you'll see. And then it was like when I had my son. So my son, here's a picture of my kiddos. This is them looking cute last Christmas. We have not done our Christmas pictures yet this year. And this is what they really look like. You know, if you've done Christmas pictures, you have a million pictures like this. So my son was born, and I had a really long labor, and at the end of it, like, I ended up having a C-section, and I remember the first time I heard him cry, and it was like my heart burst open, and it was like, oh my goodness, everybody was right. And I couldn't believe it. But see, what they don't tell you is that when your heart bursts open with this incredible love you have for your kids, it's like Pandora's box. All these other emotions come out with it. And I kind of got a taste of it when I was pregnant, because I remember crying at the state of the Costco pizza line. Like, to pick up food, I was just so overwhelmed with sadness that it was so messy. And of course, like, I went to the manager, which now I'm like, oh, how could I do that? Or you know that book that Amazon always recommends when you're doing your baby registry, Love You Forever? Has anyone ever gotten through that book without weeping uncontrollably? And then fear. Fear is one of those things that as a parent, like, I don't feel like I'm a fearful person, but all of a sudden I realized I was afraid of everything. But then I was looking back through my kids' pictures, and what I noticed is that there's warning labels on everything. Like the stroller on the left, and the bouncer, and then the one on the bottom with 2 arrows, there's 2 warnings on it. And all it says is warning, advertencia. I don't speak Spanish, but it says babies can suffocate. It doesn't have anything to do with the pack and play. It's just planting fear in your heart. But my favorite warning label is this one in my car. I am sitting in the front driver's seat of my car, and it says, don't put your baby in the seat while you're driving. And I'm like, you know what? My baby can't read while he's driving. This is ridiculous. They have warning labels everywhere that are reminding you that the world is this dangerous place. And of course, I have to wonder, they made these things for babies, right? Like, these things are made for kids, but they're telling me they're super dangerous. So I remember being afraid. But guilt. Now, guilt was the one that I was not prepared for at all. My mom is someone who loves to joke about mom guilt, and so I feel like I kind of had water off a duck's back when it came to guilt until I had kids. And then all of a sudden, I felt like, oh, I am not getting this right, no matter what I do. I mean, my husband and I, when my son turned 1, he's my older child, when he turned 1, we had a themed birthday party, like a Pinterest birthday party where I made bingo cards that were custom made with pictures of him from his first year. It was ridiculous. It was ridiculous. And his birthday is in March, and it was about February when I realized that he was going to have a second birthday. And I had planned nothing for that birthday party. And we were driving past his house on our way to church, and they were having a banging party in the backyard. I could see this balloon arch over the gate, and there were cars all over the street, and there was a bounce house that I could see, and I thought, we should do that for a 2-year-old because that would be super fun. And I was kind of being cheeky with my husband, and then the wind shifted, and this giant silver Mylar balloon was in the shape of a 2. This was a second birthday party, and I had planned 0 for my son's second birthday party. And now that I have 2 kids, I have the extra added guilt of my daughter has no pictures. I mean, you saw the 2 pictures that I have of her, and her baby book is still incomplete. She's now 3.5, and I got her birth certificate so that I could get a Great America season pass. So it was about 6 months ago that I ordered her birth certificate. My son, we waited 6 weeks. We were at the county to get the birth certificate. My daughter, well, we know she exists, right? Because she's here and she keeps us up at night and she likes to argue with us. So we know she's here. We don't need a birth certificate, right? And now that I'm in school, there's all the extra added guilt that comes with drop-off and pick-up lines at school and lunches and the holidays, right? Now the holidays where you start to see people with their decorations up, and I'm like, I was traveling last week and speaking today, and I have my Christmas shower curtain up, which is something. But with all of these things, as parents, we start to feel like, oh man, what are we doing? I mean, this guilt can just become overwhelming. And I realize that it's not just me. I have the privilege of speaking to a bunch of different MOPS groups, and I've heard from all different people. But one of my favorite quotes is from the comedian Jim Gaffigan. And he talks about guilt, and he says, no matter how hard you try to be a good parent, you always know deep down that you could do more. I feel guilty when I travel out of town to do shows. I feel guilty when I'm in town and I don't spend every single moment with my children. He has 5. I feel guilty when I'm spending time with my children and I'm not doing something constructive toward their intellectual development. Anyone have a tablet? I feel guilty when I feed them unhealthy food they like. I feel guilty when I feed them healthy food they didn't like. Anyone have kids who didn't eat on Thanksgiving? I feel guilty when I drop them off at school. I feel guilty when I pick them up at school. I feel guilty mostly for writing this book instead of spending time with them. Great, now I've probably made you feel guilty for reading this book. I feel guilty about that now too, sorry. And so it's kind of funny, but when you think about it, there are endless things for which we can feel guilty as parents. It's like you cannot win. All you have to do is check out the comments on Facebook posts about parenting, because for everything that someone can do or say, someone is disagreeing adamantly. And all of this can get in the way of living to the full. This year at MOPS, we're talking about to the full. And I love the pictures they give of letting our hair down and worrying less and sucking the marrow out of life, which is really gross when you think about it. But there's this picture of, just living your life in a way that embodies freedom. And guilt can keep us from those things. It makes us worry, it makes us hold back, and we're certainly not living out who God created us to be to the full. So as I was thinking about this experiment I've been in for 6.5 years of guilt called parenting, I started thinking through what are the things that have helped me. And one of the things that helps me to live to the full when it comes to guilt is to recognize that guilt withers where grace grows. So the things that I can do to cultivate grace in my life help me to feel less guilty, because it's like grace grows up and chokes out the guilt because it's so big and so extravagant and so beautiful that the guilt just doesn't stick and it doesn't shine the way that it can. And so they're very different growing environments, though. Like guilt grows in shame and silence and hiding, and grace grows in the sunshine, in the light, in community. So as I was thinking through, what are the things that I can do to cultivate grace? What are the things that I can do to make the environment in my life and in my home such that grace is what abounds? And I started thinking through I have a few things that I think that are really helpful for me, and I think they'll be helpful for you. And the first one is to name your shame, which sounds weird, but guilt feelings are often these little like pinpricks you feel. Like they're the kind of things that's like background music. And then have you ever been in a store and you find yourself humming or singing along with the song that's on the radio? But then you realize, what am I singing? Like, I don't need to sing Love Fool or this time of year, what is it? What's that Wham song? Last Christmas. You find yourself singing along with Last Christmas and you're like, what am I doing to get to this point in my life? Well, it's ironic, but like if you turn up the things that you're feeling guilty for, you can start to kind of see them for what they are. And instead of kind of leading the way that you're thinking and the way that you're living, you say like, wait, that doesn't make sense. And so I was thinking through some of the things that spark guilt for moms. So some of it is like spending time away from their kids. There's a mom's night out, Go to the mom's night out, go see your friends, get away with your spouse, like do the things that feed you, because we feel guilty. I feel guilty when I don't want my kids to eat off my plate. Because you know what happens is I'll get a salad and I like to save the best, like the croutons for the end. And my kids immediately want the croutons. And I'm like, I did not get this salad to eat lettuce. I am not a monster. And then I feel guilty for telling them, no, like you eat your French fries that I got you. Like they don't want that. They want what I have, right? Or I feel guilty when I sleep in, or when I love coming to speak to MOPS groups and then I'm not dropping them off at school. And we hear this and I should enjoy every minute. I give you permission right now, do not enjoy every minute. There are a lot of minutes that are not enjoyable, like taking pictures for Christmas, not enjoyable. Stomach flus, not enjoyable. Traveling, not enjoyable. I know I'm hitting some like pain points right now because we just finished Thanksgiving. And you just feel like I just can't get it together because my house is dirty like all the time with kids, because as soon as I put it away, they take it out and it's messy somehow in between me putting it away and them taking it out. So when we feel guilty about those things, what we're feeling guilty about, if you really think about it, is I feel guilty when I have human needs. I feel guilty that I need to eat food, or I need to sleep, or I need to spend time with people other than the ones who want to talk to me about Paw Patrol. I feel guilty about these things, but really these are the things that are part of what it means to be a human. It's part of what it means to be a person who has physical and mental and emotional and relational needs. And we're feeling guilty about that. So that's the first thing. Like when you think through what am I feeling guilty about, perhaps it's that. A second thing that I feel guilty about is when I start to see how moms do other things. Now, you guys talked about changing the rules. I feel guilty when I go to the playground and I open up my kids' lunch if I have it, because 2 kids, they may or may not have food. But there's things that I know they're going to eat, like beef jerky or pouches, the things like that. And the mom next to me opens this beautiful metal bento box that has like cut up bell peppers and quinoa, and everything was like grown in their organic garden. And I feel guilty about that. And I think, or screen time, I am the worst mother ever because my kids have seen a TV screen before they're 18 years old. And I feel like I am the worst mother ever. And when I asked a bunch of people, like, what do you feel guilty about? The number one thing that I got from men and women was work. I feel guilty because I am a working parent. Or I feel guilty because I'm not a working parent and I feel like I should be making money, especially where we live, to contribute to our home. And so what we're feeling guilty about when we think about looking at the way other people do things is I'm feeling guilty when my parenting isn't the same as someone else's parenting. And I'm just going to give you permission right now. Your parenting should be different. As Lily mentioned, I spoke about parenting with different personalities. Your kids have different needs than other people's kids. I mean, I don't pack quinoa for my kids because I can either not buy it and not throw it away, or I can buy it so that I look like I have it together and then throw it away. and so just thinking through, like, your parenting is not going to be the same as someone else's parenting. Another thing is that this one is really painful, especially as your kids start to get older. But we start to feel bad about the way things are turning out. Like painful things that happen to your kids that you feel like, I wish I could have prevented this. Like friends that are not friends or frenemies. Or when I watch my kids at school and I see him playing by himself, it makes my heart break. Or when you have that kid, like I do, who stands up in front of the class and says, all girls are stupid, which happened more than once last year. Like literally. And then this also for parents who have kids with special needs, this is a particular thing. Because my son is on the autism spectrum and I feel so guilty when I think about like, what if I could have changed this? Or what if I had taken him to get intervention earlier? Or what if? If only I was more blank. Or it's all my fault. Or sometimes I feel guilty because people say you're raising your kids right when they do something good. But the converse of that is that when your kids are people who make their own choices that are not great choices, that means you messed up, right? When your kids are the ones biting kids at preschool or yelling back at you in the middle of the store because they're exhausted or whatever it is, and people are not telling you you're raising them right. And as they get to be teenagers and make their own decisions with dating and things like that, guilt can start to be overwhelming. So what we're really feeling guilty about with that is I feel guilty that I can't control everything. I'm looking to make sure that everyone in here knows they can't control everything. Because I know I need to be reminded, I do this message and I have to be like, okay, I can't control everything. Parenting is an act of faith. We pour our time and our resources and our energy and our love and have no idea what's going to come out the other side. You can read every book. You can do everything right. And they're still people. And we know from the Bible that they're still sinners. In fact, I wish my son did not know that because I asked him about a mistake that he'd made and he shrugged and said, we all sin. I thought, that is not the lesson you're supposed to take away from church. But it's an act of faith through and through. You are called to love and be parent to your children, but you cannot control the outcome. You're just called to be there along the way for what God is going to do through you and in you in that process. And the last thing that we feel guilty about, and this is the one that is the hardest and the most painful, but they're the actual parenting mistakes that we make. You know, the time where we lose it with our kids and we yell at them, or we discipline out of frustration, not out of like, I know what I want to do and I'm going to be calm about this, or that we realize that I wish I could have handled that differently. And we feel guilty about that, which is feeling guilty when we parent imperfectly. And that one is so important. I'm going to come back to that one and I'm going to sit there for a minute. But I want to tell you another thing that can help you before that can help you with cultivating grace in your life. And that's to step outside of yourself. And what that means is that we ask what we would say to somebody else who feels guilty about it. Because a lot of times we are so hard on ourselves. But if our friend said, oh, I feel guilty that I don't feed my kids quinoa, you would say, you know what, that's okay, right? We would offer them some grace. And so it's important to think through, like, what would somebody else say? And one of the most powerful experiences that I had in the last year was I was feeling really terrible about this situation where I basically became a mama bear on the playground with these kids that were being too rough with my daughter. And I was like, oh, my daughter. And so I kind of got really sharp with them. And I felt so guilty, like that is not the person I want to be. And I happened to run into a friend of mine who was the MOPS coordinator at the time. And she just said, girlfriend, I'm going to speak some truth into your life. And she prayed with me and she told me that I was loved and that it was okay and we all make mistakes and God loves me and Jesus still chose me. And it just, I didn't believe her. Like, to be fair, like when you're in that, like you don't believe them at the time, but you still need to hear it. And so sometimes, like, that's why I love MOPS with the tables, because sometimes you can bring something up that is like a little thing and it becomes the entire discussion, right? Because you're thinking like, oh, you know, I feel bad about this. But no, like it's actually like, let's unpack this. And then you hear the two most powerful words for cultivating grace, me too. I feel that way too. I have not always been perfect at parenting. Like, this is behind the curtain where we start to let our hair down and say, yeah, my husband and I don't have a great marriage right now because we're parenting alongside each other, or I'm mad that he works so much, or, you know, it's just, you know, there's these things going on. Or on another level, it could be just sometimes, you know what? My kids do those weird things too. They too like to lick the banisters at school or chew gum that they found under the table, or they're not potty trained yet. That's a big one because everybody's like, my kid was they potty trained themselves at 18 months. Like they just hopped up on the toilet and I'm like, do not share that story. My kid was 35 when he potty trained. And he still doesn't like it. But when we step outside of ourselves, it helps us to see that we are not the only one. And for some of us, that guilt is very deeply rooted. And I am a huge advocate for counseling. That sometimes that it takes someone who is trained to help you navigate something, to help you go through it and unpack it and learn how to get rid of that guilt. Because it's not easy. If it were easy, this would not be a topic that I'd be talking about. I'd be talking about something else. But because this isn't easy, I just want to say that if you're in that position where you feel like you're stuck in the same place and like you just can't let go of this guilt, there are amazing resources. You can do counseling online now, which is crazy. But there's a lot of resources where we live for counselors and people who are trained to do this. In fact, Lily just told me that she's going to go to school to be a counselor. She didn't say that literally, but I'm just speaking that out so that she does it. Now you guys can hold her to it. And what I've noticed though, so when we start to step outside of ourselves and think through what other people are going to do or what they're going to say, and that can be an encouragement, you know what? Sometimes people are not an encouragement. Sometimes they're terrible. I read this story on Reddit about someone saying that every night they would hear their daughter on the monitor, and she would say, I love mommy, I love daddy, I love my baby brother, I love my teacher, and they'd go through this whole list. And so they told this adorable story, right? Aren't you like, oh, that's really cute? And people were like, why do you have a baby monitor in your baby's room? That's creepy. And I'm like, that is no. But for everything, like sometimes people can be fickle. And the same people who are so supportive can be like, oh, you made what choice with your kid? Or you did this. Like all of a sudden you go from being, you're a good mom to you're the worst mom. And it can change very quickly. So for me, I just want to say that the last thing that I want to focus on that can help us cultivate grace is to let in the light and to ask, what does God say? And as I think through, one of the passages that is super famous, like one of the most famous passages in the Bible is Psalm 23. You hear it all the time at funerals. You hear it quoted all the time. And I thought, this is the invitation of the life that God extends to us, of what it means. Like when we want to cultivate grace, this is the life that he says, this is the life that I want for you. And it starts, the Lord is my shepherd. I have all that I need. Which isn't about what you lack or what you don't have or what other people have or that you're not enough, but you have all that you need when he is the one shepherding you, when he is the one leading your life. And it says, he lets me rest in green meadows. He leads me beside peaceful streams. He renews my strength. Or you've probably heard it, he restores my soul. And I was reading up on this, and you know how they have weird little tidbits in the notes sometimes? One of the tidbits is that sheep do not like running water. So the peaceful streams is like just specifically for them. This is what will nourish them. And so I thought, even when we're extra, God is like, it's okay. Like I will take you to the peaceful spot that will nourish your soul. And so when we feel guilty about having human needs, about having physical needs and having limitations, God's like, I will take you to places of rest. Now, this does not mean that you will never have a sleepless night. And this does not mean that your kids will immediately do everything that you say and that it will be a peaceful life. But it means that he offers us this invitation as he guides our life, that in the midst of those things, it's okay to find places of rest. It is okay to go to mom's night out, like I said. It is okay to spend time doing the things that nourish your soul, because that is what God is inviting us to. The second thing, it goes on and says, he guides me along right paths, bringing honor to his name, or for his name's sake. And I think about, as a parent, there are so many things that I don't know. There are so many things that are confusing, and I feel like I just don't know how to handle this. And what this psalm is telling us is that we have guidance. He's inviting us to lean on him and trust that even when our parenting looks different from somebody else's parenting, that he will guide us to the type of choices that we need to make for his name's sake, that he wants for people to know that when we follow him, that he is in control and that he is good. And so we can have that guidance. And then it continues. And this is the part, like I said, is really hard for us as parents. Even when I walk through the darkest valley, or as they say, the valley of the shadow of death, I can't see in front of me. I will not be afraid, for you are close beside me. Your rod and your staff protect and comfort me. Again, not saying that God invites us to a life that's easy or where we don't have experiences where we feel so utterly small and out of control as parents that we just don't know what to do. But what it's saying is in that we have him. That he is walking beside us, that he is not confounded by the darkness. He is not confused and wondering where to go. He is guiding us and protecting us in it. And that when we feel like I can't control everything, what we have is the one who put the stars in place, walking us through it. That he is with us. And then it goes on, you prepare a feast for me in the presence of my enemies, even those enemies that are in our own minds. God is preparing this feast, saying, you are welcome at this table, at this celebration, at this feast. Here is the most lavish banquet you can imagine, because you belong here. You honor me by anointing my head with oil. Now, this was in this tradition, it was an honored guest. You would anoint their head. You would show that they were welcome, that you have a place here. My cup overflows with blessings. That there is just so much that it comes over and spills over the sides. This is what God is saying as he looks at you, even when we feel guilty in our imperfect parenting. And the last verse of this psalm is the one that just hits me when I feel like guilt is just going to choke me. It says, surely your goodness and unfailing love. Now, in Hebrew, that word unfailing love is the special love that God has, the hesed love, that's often translated as loving kindness. This is the good for you, never failing, always on your side love that God has. It's a special word in Hebrew. And it says that love will pursue me all the days of our life. Now, in Hebrew, pursue, I always get this picture of like a kid pulling like a little pull toy, like it's just kind of gently coming along after me. But the word is actually much more aggressive than that. It's like a dog chasing a rabbit. You know that song, Reckless Love, about his love coming hard after you? This is the kind of love that David is talking about in this psalm. And David was someone who was no stranger to being chased and being pursued by Saul, like to kill him. And he was saying that more importantly than the things that are pursuing me, God is pursuing me. His love is pursuing me all the days of my life. And this time of year, as we think through the picture of God of the universe being born in a manger, that is the depth of the pursuit that God has for you. Even on your worst day. Even on the day where you feel like I am irredeemable, I have completely blown it. The depth of God's pursuit for you, even on that day, is letting go of all the honor and all the worship and all of everything that was due to him and being born as a baby and living a sinless life and dying on a cross so that we could be made right with him and be with him at his table forever. That is what, when we feel that guilt of I parent imperfectly, you are pursued wholeheartedly. And David ends this psalm by saying, I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Even when we parent imperfectly, there is room for at the table for you. There is a place where God is inviting you, and he has made this place for you. And he is saying, come, because our shame and our guilt makes us feel like we're not worthy. It makes us feel like there's not a place. And God is saying much louder than that, no, you are welcome here. and I will find you, because when we want to hide and feel ashamed, he is still coming after us. And that is the most important part of cultivating grace, is to recognize that every day God's grace is for you. In fact, it says God's grace is for all the days of your life, not the days where you do the perfect thing and the right thing and you know you have it all together, but the days when you don't. The days when you feel like I am hanging on by a thread. He is holding on to you. He's not going to let you go. He's not this one. I'm not going to let you go. And some of you need to know that today as we go into a crazy season, as we go into parenting, whatever the next sleep regression is or the next phase. But even on those days, God is pursuing you. His love is for you. So what can we do this week to kind of take this out of this room? Because right now we feel like we're in a community, and right now we feel like we're all together in this. Well, I want to challenge you to take some of those steps that I talked about, to lean in and name your shame. When you feel that guilt, like actually think through, what am I feeling guilty about? And say it in a cheeky way, like, I'm feeling guilty that 4 hours of sleep did not do it. Because you know what? Then you can think through what I tell my friend, 4 hours of sleep has to be enough. You are too much if you need more than 4 hours of sleep, right? No, so like if you lean in and think about, okay, I'm feeling guilty because my kids want to eat all the croutons. No, don't let them do it. No, don't do it. And as we sit around these tables, I want to challenge you to step outside of yourself too. Like, listen for those things where you can be an encouragement to someone. And maybe you see something online and you think, you know what? That person needs to know she's a good mom. Or that I'm praying for her. Or that I care about her. Because a lot of times we think, I don't have time for a phone call, right? Who has had time for a phone call in the last 10 years? Nobody. But sometimes it's like, I can send a text, or I can write on their Facebook message where they have a picture with their kids being crazy or whatever, where you can just encourage them. So step outside of yourself and think through not only what would they say to me when I'm feeling guilty, but how can I help them know that they're not alone in this? And then I have something special that you will be getting around your tables. I have these cards for letting in the light. Now, these are cards that I want you to carry with you. You can stuff them in your purse so that when you're digging around for a half-eaten thing, you accidentally grab it. Or you can put it on your mirror or somewhere where you will see it. But it says on one side, good for a do-over. Because a lot of us need to know that there is a do-over for us today. That God's grace is for this moment, this day where I feel terrible, like I just blew it. So on one side it says, good for a do-over. Things didn't go as planned. Take a breath and start again. It's like a Daniel Tiger thing right there. But just as a reminder that you can have a do-over today. And on the back it has Psalm 23:6. Surely your goodness and unfailing love will pursue me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. So I want to encourage you to take these and put them somewhere where they will help you to remember that grace is here today, that God is still sowing seeds of grace. He still loves me and pursuing me. And as I think about what could we do with this do-over, this goodness and unfailing love that God extends to us every day. And just imagine what our lives would be like if we could live this out. That it's not just that we would feel free and that to the full and that we would suck the marrow out of life, but we would have that picture of that then our grace would extend to the people around us. That we would have the ability to say to our kids, let's take a breath and start again. That forgiveness would be something that marks us in all of our relationships. That freedom would be something that we invite other people to because of what God has done in us. And it would help us to just be somebody who cultivates grace all around them, not just in our own lives, but in other lives. So I want to end today with a bold reminder to live life to the full. Bloom, burst forth in cascades of grace as you embrace the truth that not only is there room for you, you are an honored guest at the table. God has prepared a place for you. And there is nothing you can do or have done to ruin or fracture God's grace for you. There's nothing you could do that will make him love you more. No amount of striving or performing or making your kids smile in Christmas pictures. Live joyfully, knowing that you can be you and you are loved. And may your guilt wither in the light of God's grace. And may you shine that grace to those around you as you live life to the full. Thank you, moms.